The wedding ring thrown away, the wedding ring spun once across the polished marble floor before settling beneath the glow of a crystal chandelier. Its tiny circle of gold reflected the lights above as if it still believed it belonged to a marriage worth saving. No one bent down to pick it up. Emma Carter simply folded her arms. "You can keep it," she said, her voice calm enough to hurt more than shouting ever could. "It's the only valuable thing you'll ever own." A few quiet laughs drifted through the private dining room. The Carter family had gathered to celebrate Emma's promotion to regional director at Sterling Financial. Expensive wine filled crystal glasses. Soft jazz floated through hidden speakers. Every guest wore tailored suits and confident smiles that belonged to people accustomed to success. Only Ethan looked out of place. His navy blazer had been pressed carefully that morning, but the fabric had begun to fade around the elbows. His watch was nearly 10 years old. His shoes had been polished so many times the leather had lost its shine. Emma noticed every detail. She always did. "I spent 5 years believing in your dreams," she continued, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "5 years waiting for you to become someone." She smiled. "I finally realized you never will." Across the table, her younger sister avoided Ethan's eyes. Their father sighed without speaking. Even the waiter seemed uncertain whether he should continue pouring wine. Ethan stared at the ring lying on the floor. That ring had cost him nearly 6 months of savings. Not because it was extravagant, because, back then, it represented everything he had. He remembered standing outside a jewelry store in the rain after work, calculating whether he could afford another payment without missing rent. He remembered the trembling in his hands when he opened the small velvet box. He remembered Emma crying as she whispered yes. Those memories suddenly felt like they belonged to strangers. "I'm not asking you to argue," Emma said. "I've already signed the divorce papers." She slid a folder across the table. "I just need your signature." Silence settled over the room. Every pair of eyes landed on Ethan. Some expected anger. Others expected begging. After all, wasn't that what failed husbands did? Instead, Ethan slowly reached for the folder. His hands remained perfectly steady. He read every page, every line, every signature. Then he picked up the pen. Without saying a single word, he signed his name. Emma blinked. She had expected resistance. She had prepared speeches. She had imagined tears. Instead, all she received was silence. Somehow, silence hurt more. She pushed back her chair. "I hope one day you become someone worth remembering." She turned toward the exit. Halfway across the room, she paused without looking back. "Oh, and don't bother calling me." The glass door closed behind her. Only then did Ethan stand. He bent down, picked up the wedding ring, placed it carefully into his pocket. Not because he wanted the marriage back, because promises deserved more respect than the people who broke them. That night, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. Emma had already taken most of the furniture. The living room echoed with every footstep. One coffee mug remained in the kitchen. One chair. One old laptop resting on a scratched wooden desk beside the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The city outside glittered with thousands of lights, each belonging to lives moving forward while his seemed frozen in place. Ethan reheated leftover soup. He never finished it. Instead, he sat before the laptop. The screen illuminated the empty apartment. Lines of programming code stretched endlessly across the monitor. Artificial intelligence. Predictive financial systems. Market behavior algorithms. It looked impossibly complicated to anyone else. To Ethan, it looked like possibility. Years earlier, professors had called him brilliant. Investors had once listened carefully when he explained how machine learning could transform financial forecasting. But then Emma had received a job offer in another city. She had asked him to postpone building his startup. "Just for a little while," she'd said. "We need stability first." So he accepted a corporate position. Good salary. Predictable future. Dream postponed. Every promotion Emma received became another reason to wait. Another year. Another compromise. Another forgotten version of himself. Now, there was no one left asking him to wait. He opened an old folder buried deep inside his hard drive. Project Orion. The first business plan he had ever written. Date modified, 7 years ago. He smiled for the first time in weeks. "Let's see if you're still alive." The first 6 months after the divorce were brutal. His savings disappeared faster than expected. Investors rejected him. Banks rejected him. Former colleagues politely declined meetings. One venture capitalist barely glanced at his presentation. Financial AI? The man laughed. Every week someone claims they'll revolutionize Wall Street. Another investor interrupted halfway through Ethan's explanation. If your wife left you, he said casually, perhaps she recognized something the market already has. The meeting ended 4 minutes later. Ethan walked home instead of taking the subway. Not because he enjoyed walking, because he couldn't justify spending the fare. At night, he freelanced as a software consultant. During the day, he rebuilt Orion. Sleep became optional. Coffee became dinner. Hope became discipline. Sometimes exhaustion hit so hard that he fell asleep sitting at his desk. When he woke, keyboard marks covered his forehead. He simply continued typing. Months turned into a year. Then another. 3 employees eventually joined him. None earned competitive salaries. All believed in the vision. Their office occupied the 2nd floor above an old bakery. Every morning the smell of fresh bread drifted through cracked windows. Their conference room doubled as storage. Their desks didn't match. The heating failed every winter. Still, every line of code brought Orion closer to life. One Friday afternoon, after another investor rejection, Ethan remained staring at the ceiling. His lead engineer approached quietly. Should we stop? Ethan looked around the tiny office. Paint peeled from the walls. The internet disconnected twice every afternoon. Coffee stains covered nearly every desk. No, Ethan answered. Why not? He smiled faintly. Because failure is expensive. The engineer frowned. And quitting? Ethan looked back toward the glowing computer screens. Quitting costs everything. 3 years later, a hedge fund in Singapore agreed to test Orion's prediction engine. Not because they fully believed, because they were desperate. Their traditional models had failed repeatedly. Ethan's software quietly produced better results. Then dramatically better. Within 6 months, returns exceeded every expectation. News spread carefully at first, then rapidly. Financial institutions from London, Tokyo, Frankfurt, New York. Everyone wanted meetings. Ethan still wore simple suits, still drove the same used sedan, still answered customer emails himself. Success arrived. Ego never did. Reporters tried arranging interviews. He declined every invitation. Business magazines published articles anyway. Nobody seemed able to obtain recent photographs. One publication eventually called him the Invisible CEO. The nickname stayed. Ironically, mystery became the company's greatest marketing advantage. No one knew exactly who he was. Everyone knew Orion worked. Within 5 years, Orion Technologies expanded into 43 countries. Its valuation crossed $10 billion. Then 20, then 40. The tiny office above the bakery became headquarters overlooking Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling glass reflected sunrise across the Hudson River every morning. Employees numbered in the thousands. Yet Ethan's personal office remained surprisingly simple. 1 wooden desk, 2 bookshelves, a photograph of his late mother. Nothing else. Only one object stayed locked inside the bottom drawer. A small velvet box, containing an old wedding ring. Not because he missed Emma, because it reminded him exactly who he had promised never to become again. Someone willing to abandon himself for another person's approval. Meanwhile, Emma's perfect life had begun quietly unraveling. The executive she left Ethan for had indeed been wealthy. Luxury vacations, designer handbags, private clubs, magazine-worthy dinners. It looked perfect. From outside. Inside, respect had never existed. Only appearances. The relationship collapsed after 2 years. Her promotion slowed. Corporate restructuring eliminated trusted mentors. New management arrived with different priorities. Suddenly, experience mattered less than politics. She found herself working longer hours for fewer opportunities. Then came the announcement. Sterling Financial faced acquisition. Employees whispered nervously through hallways. Entire departments could disappear overnight. Only one company possessed enough capital to complete the purchase. Orion Technologies. Nobody knew much about its founder. Only that he rarely appeared in public. Only that billion-dollar negotiations often lasted less than 30 minutes because his decisions were immediate. Some called him brilliant. Others called him ruthless. Emma hoped only one thing. That Orion would keep her division. Weeks later, elegant invitations arrived for the official acquisition gala. Attendance mandatory. Executives only. Emma spent nearly 2 hours choosing her dress. Black silk. Minimal jewelry. professional, confident. She checked herself once more before leaving. Tonight could determine the next decade of her career. She had no idea. The past had already reserved a seat beside her future. The ballroom occupied the top floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel. Glass walls revealed the city beneath it, a river of headlights flowing between towers of steel and light. A string quartet played near the entrance. Waiters moved silently through the crowd with silver trays, carrying champagne that no one truly tasted. Every conversation revolved around the same subject: Orion Technologies. More specifically, the man behind it. I heard he once rejected a merger during the first 5 minutes. No, he walked out before the presentation even began. They say he memorizes every number in a company's annual report. I heard he doesn't forgive incompetence. Emma listened while pretending not to. She stood beside 2 senior directors from Sterling, holding a champagne glass she had not touched. Her posture remained straight. Her expression remained composed, but her fingers tightened slightly around the stem. This acquisition could either save her career or erase it. Emma. She turned. Richard Wallace, Sterling, Financial's chief operating officer, approached with a strained smile. Months of negotiations had carved new lines around his eyes. You look prepared, he said. I am. Good. Orion's leadership team has already arrived. Emma glanced toward the entrance. Several executives in dark suits had entered the ballroom. Security moved discreetly around them. Members of Sterling's board immediately abandoned their conversations and hurried forward to greet them. But none of the arriving executives seemed important enough to be the mysterious founder. Is the CEO here? Emma asked. Richard checked his watch. Not yet. The quartet shifted into a slower melody. Emma breathed carefully. She had spent the entire week reviewing contracts, financial forecasts, and restructuring plans. If she could speak with Orion's CEO tonight, even briefly, she might convince him that her division deserved protection. She knew how to impress powerful men. Confidence, precision, no unnecessary emotion. She had built her career on appearing impossible to intimidate. Then the ballroom doors opened. The music did not stop, but conversations did. A man stepped inside. He wore a black tuxedo with no visible designer label. The tailoring was flawless, yet understated. No entourage surrounded him. Only a silver-haired woman walked at his side, speaking quietly while he listened. He moved without hurry, without hesitation, as if rooms had been waiting for him his entire life. Emma noticed him only because the guests nearest the entrance began turning. She looked up. The champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. Ethan. For several seconds, her mind refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. He was older, not dramatically, but time had sharpened him. The softness she remembered had disappeared from his face. His shoulders were broader. His posture was effortless. His hair was neatly styled, touched faintly with gray near the temples. He did not look like the man she had left sitting beneath a chandelier with divorce papers before him. He looked like someone who had learned how little approval mattered. Emma's heart struck once, hard against her ribs. Why was he here? Perhaps Orion had hired him. That explanation came quickly, comfortingly. After all, Ethan had always been talented with technology. Maybe he had found a respectable position. Perhaps he worked in research or software development. That would explain the tuxedo, the invitation, the confidence. For one uncomfortable moment, she remembered the sentence she had spoken years ago. I hope one day you become someone worth remembering. She pushed the memory away. Do you know him? Asked the director beside her. Emma lifted her chin. My ex-husband. The woman's eyebrows rose. Really? Yes. What does he do? Emma watched Ethan accept a handshake from a board member. Something technical, probably. She forced a small smile. He was always good with computers. Across the ballroom, Ethan turned his head. Their eyes met. The world did not stop. The quartet continued playing. Glasses still clinked. People still whispered. But Emma felt as though the room had narrowed into a single silent corridor between them. Ethan showed no surprise, no anger, no satisfaction. He looked at her with the calm recognition one might give an old photograph discovered inside a forgotten drawer. Then he looked away. That indifference unsettled her more deeply than hatred would have. Richard Wallace suddenly stepped toward Ethan. Emma watched Sterling's chief operating officer approach him with an urgency usually reserved for ministers, presidents, or men capable of deciding the fate of thousands. Richard extended both hands. Mr. Cole. Welcome. Ethan shook one of them. Thank you, Richard. Emma's breath caught. Mr. Cole. Not Ethan. Not an old employee. Not some unknown software consultant. Richard appeared nervous around him. That did not make sense. Emma crossed the room before she had time to reconsider. Ethan. He turned. Up close, the difference felt even greater. His eyes were still the same dark brown she remembered, but there was no uncertainty behind them now. No silent question asking whether he had done enough to deserve love. Emma, he said. Her name sounded formal in his voice, almost distant. She searched his face for something recognizable. You look, she paused. Different. So do you. It was not a compliment. It was not an insult. Simply an observation. She glanced at the silver-haired woman beside him. Ethan made no attempt to introduce them. Emma smiled carefully. I didn't know you worked with Orion. The woman looked at Ethan. A flicker of amusement appeared in her eyes. Ethan adjusted one cuff. You could say that. What department? Before he could answer, Richard returned. Mr. Cole, the chairman is ready for you backstage. Mr. Cole. Again. Emma looked from Richard to Ethan. A strange pressure built inside her chest. Richard finally noticed the confusion on her face. You two know each other? We were married, Ethan said. No bitterness. No embarrassment. Only fact. Richard stared at Emma. She recognized the exact moment he understood. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Surprise first, then alarm. Emma felt suddenly exposed. Not because Ethan had revealed anything cruel. Because he had said so little. Richard cleared his throat. I see. Emma forced a laugh. Yes. A long time ago. She looked at Ethan's tuxedo again. The cufflinks. The watch. The stillness of a man who no longer needed to fill silence. I'm surprised they let you into a place like this, she said. The words escaped before judgment could stop them. It was an old reflex. A defensive blade sharpened by years of contempt. Nearby conversations softened. Richard's face went pale. The silver-haired woman lowered her eyes, hiding what might have been a smile. Emma immediately regretted the sentence. But pride would not allow her to withdraw it. Ethan looked at her. There it was. The perfect opportunity. He could remind her of the ring. The divorce. The laughter. He could humiliate her in front of everyone who mattered to her career. Instead, he merely straightened his cuff. I was invited. Then he walked away. The silence he left behind spread wider than any insult. Richard turned toward Emma. What were you thinking? She stared after Ethan. What do you mean? Richard leaned closer. Do you truly not know? Know what? Before he could answer, the ballroom lights dimmed. The quartet stopped. A spotlight illuminated the stage at the far end of the room. Sterling. Financials chairman walked toward the podium amid polite applause. Emma remained frozen beside Richard. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman began. Tonight marks the beginning of a new era for Sterling Financial. A large screen descended behind him. The Sterling logo appeared beside Orion's silver constellation emblem. This acquisition is more than a transaction. It is the union of a century-old institution with the most innovative financial technology company of our generation. Emma heard the words without understanding them. Her attention remained fixed on Ethan, who stood near the side of the stage. The silver-haired woman had joined several Orion executives. Every one of them waited for him. Not beside him. For him. Orion Technologies began in a rented office with 3 employees and an idea most investors considered impossible. Images appeared on the screen. A cramped room. Mismatched desks. Whiteboards covered in equations. A younger Ethan stood in the corner of one photograph, sleeves rolled up, coffee cup in hand. Emma stopped breathing. The chairman continued. Today, Orion operates in 43 countries and manages systems supporting trillions of dollars in global transactions. Another image appeared. A glass headquarters overlooking Manhattan. Then a magazine cover. The invisible CEO. No photograph. Only a silhouette. Yet the company's founder has remained largely outside public view. Tonight, for the first time since the agreement was announced, he has agreed to join us. The spotlight moved. It landed on Ethan. The entire ballroom turned toward him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and chief executive officer of Orion Technologies, the architect of tonight's $48 billion acquisition. The chairman smiled. Mr. Ethan Cole. For 1 second, no one reacted. Then the ballroom erupted. Applause rose beneath the chandeliers. Executives stood. Board members smiled. Cameras flashed. Richard Wallace began clapping beside Emma. She could not move. Ethan stepped onto the stage. He walked through the light with the same calmness he had shown while signing the divorce papers years before. Emma's glass trembled. A thin drop of champagne spilled over the rim and touched her wrist. She barely noticed. The ring, the empty apartment, the old laptop, the project she had dismissed as impractical, the nights she had accused him of lacking ambition, the promotions she had demanded he celebrate while his own dreams gathered dust. Every forgotten moment returned at once. Ethan reached the podium. The applause faded. He looked across the ballroom. His gaze passed over hundreds of faces. When it reached Emma, it did not pause. "Thank you," he said. His voice carried easily through the room. Sterling Financial was built over generations. That history deserves respect. Emma swallowed. "We did not acquire this company to erase what exists. We acquired it because we believe its strongest people can build what comes next." Relief moved through parts of the crowd. Ethan continued. "But respect for history does not mean fear of change. Beginning tomorrow, every division will be reviewed. Not by reputation, not by personal relationships, not by appearances." His eyes settled briefly on the front rows. "By results." Emma felt the sentence strike her personally, though he had spoken to everyone. Talent will be protected. Integrity will be rewarded. And leadership will no longer belong to those who speak the loudest, but to those who create value when no one is watching. The ballroom remained silent. No jokes, no boasting, no mention of betrayal. He did not need any of it. His existence on that stage had already answered every insult. When he finished, the audience rose again. Emma remained seated for half a second too long before forcing herself upright. Around her, people applauded Ethan as though he had always belonged among them. Perhaps he had. Perhaps she had simply been too impatient to see it. The reception continued after the speech, but Emma moved through it like someone walking underwater. People approached her with questions. Was it true? Had she really been married to him? What had he been like? Why had they divorced? She answered as little as possible. Every smile felt invasive. Every whisper sounded like judgment. Near midnight, she saw Ethan step through a side door leading toward a private terrace. She followed him. Cold air touched her face the moment she stepped outside. The city stretched beneath them. Ethan stood near the railing, one hand in his pocket, looking across the rooftops. He did not turn when she approached. "You could have told me," Emma said. "Told you what?" "That Orion was yours." He looked toward her. "You never asked." "I asked what department you worked in." "You had already decided the answer." The words were quiet. That made them impossible to fight. Emma folded her arms against the cold. "Were you planning this? The acquisition?" "No. Tonight." He glanced toward the ballroom behind them. "You think I bought a multinational company to arrange an awkward conversation with my ex-wife?" Her face warmed. "That isn't what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She looked away. For years, she had imagined that if Ethan ever became successful, he would return with anger. She had expected bitterness, accusations, perhaps even cruelty. She had never imagined this version of him, a man for whom she was no longer important enough to hate. "I heard things about Orion," she said. "About the founder, the way people described him, and I never thought it was you." He nodded once. "I know." The acknowledgement hurt more than denial. Emma stepped closer. "Why didn't you tell me about the company when we were married?" "I did." "No, you didn't. I told you about Orion every week for nearly 2 years. You called it a model." "It was a model. You said it might become a business someday." "It became one." She shook her head. "You cannot expect me to have known this would happen." "I didn't." "Then why are you looking at me like I failed some test?" Ethan's expression remained calm. "I'm not." "Yes, you are." "No, Emma. You think this is about whether you predicted my success." He turned fully toward her. "It isn't." The wind moved a strand of hair across her cheek. "Then what is it about?" "You didn't leave because I had no future." His voice did not rise. "You left because you couldn't see one." Emma stared at him. He continued. "There is a difference." She opened her mouth. No answer came. "You believed value only existed after other people recognized it," he said. "A title, a salary, a photograph in a magazine. You needed proof before you offered respect." "I was afraid." "So was I. I wanted stability." "So did I." "You weren't moving fast enough." "I was carrying both of our plans." The sentence broke something inside her. Images returned. Ethan cooking dinner while she answered late-night emails. Ethan moving to another city after her promotion. Ethan turning down a research position because she did not want to relocate. Ethan sitting in the back row during award ceremonies, applauding every time her name was called. She had remembered those years as sacrifice. Her sacrifice, never his. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't want to know." The terrace door opened. The silver-haired woman stepped outside. "Ethan, the legal team needs your approval before they leave." He nodded. "1 minute, Margaret." She returned inside. Emma watched her go. "Is she?" "My chief strategy officer." Emma hated herself for the relief she felt, then hated herself more for noticing it. "I was cruel to you," she said. Ethan said nothing. "I know that now." The words came slowly. "I convinced myself that if I made you feel ashamed, you would become more ambitious. I thought pressure would change you. It did." She looked at him. "Just not in the way you intended." The city wind filled the silence. Emma's eyes burned. "I thought you were wasting your life." "Maybe I was." She frowned. He looked back toward the skyline. "Not because Orion didn't exist. Because I kept waiting for permission to become myself." She stepped beside him. "Did you ever hate me?" "For a while." Her breath caught. "Then I got busy." A quiet laugh escaped her, followed immediately by a tear she wiped away before it could fall. "Do you know what happened after I left?" "I heard some things." "Daniel left." Ethan did not react. "He said I was too focused on work. Then my father became ill. My promotion stalled. Everything I thought I was building," she swallowed. "It didn't feel like enough." "I'm sorry about your father." The sincerity in his voice nearly undid her. "You don't have to be kind." "I'm not being kind for you." She looked at him. "I'm being honest for me." Emma lowered her eyes. "I kept the divorce papers." Ethan waited. "Sometimes I looked at your signature. It was so neat. I hated that." "Why?" "Because I wanted proof that leaving me had broken you." His expression changed slightly. Not triumph. Sadness. It did. The admission surprised her. "For a long time," he added. "Then how did you keep going?" "I stopped asking pain for permission." The terrace lights reflected in his eyes. Emma remembered the night she had thrown away the ring. The laughter around the table. The way he bent down alone to pick it up. "Do you still have it?" she asked. Ethan knew exactly what she meant. "Yes." Hope appeared in her face before she could hide it. He saw it. "That doesn't mean what you think." Her hope vanished. "Why keep it?" "To remember the promise I broke." "You didn't break it." "I did." She shook her head. "I left you. And before that, I left myself." He placed both hands on the railing. "I kept choosing peace in the room instead of peace inside me. I called it love because I was afraid to call it fear." Emma studied him. The man before her had not simply become wealthy. Wealth was the least important transformation. He had become unreachable by the weapons she once used. Disapproval, mockery, comparison. They had no place to land anymore. "What happens to my division?" she asked. The question sounded small after everything else. "It will be reviewed." "By you." "By an independent team." She looked toward the ballroom. "And if they decide to close it?" "Then it closes. Even though I'm there?" "Especially because you're there." She turned sharply. "Is that revenge?" "No." His answer came without hesitation. Revenge would be allowing personal history to influence the decision. Emma absorbed that. For the first time that evening, she understood the full distance between them. He would not destroy her. He would not save her. He would simply be fair. And fairness, stripped of affection, felt colder than punishment. "What if I asked for another chance?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. The music inside the ballroom began again, muted through the glass. "A chance at what?" "At us." The words trembled. She hated that they did. "We were young. We made mistakes. I made mistakes." "So did I." "Yes." "We could start over." He looked at the woman he once loved enough to postpone his own future. He remembered her sleeping beside him while he worked quietly at the edge of the bed. He remembered buying flowers after arguments he had not started. He remembered believing endurance was proof of devotion. But when he looked at her now, the pain did not return. That was how he knew the answer. Not because he wanted to punish her. Because there was nothing left to restore. "We cannot start over," he said. Her eyes filled. "Why not?" "Because you're standing here asking for the man on the stage. That's not fair." "No. I loved you once." "I know. I might still love you." He smiled faintly, though there was no happiness in it. "You missed the future you didn't recognize." She flinched. "That isn't the same as missing me." Emma turned away. A tear slipped down her cheek. This time she did not wipe it. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Ethan reached inside his jacket. He removed a small velvet box. Emma stared at it. Her breath disappeared. He opened the lid. The wedding ring rested inside. The same small circle of gold. Still carrying a faint scratch from the night it spun across the marble floor. Emma covered her mouth. You brought it. I planned to give it back. To me? To the past. He removed the ring and placed it in her open palm. The metal felt cold. You said it was the only valuable thing I would ever own, he said. Shame lowered her face. You were wrong. I know. But not because of the company. She looked up. It was valuable because I bought it when I had almost nothing. Because I meant every promise I made while holding it. Emma's fingers closed around the ring. I don't deserve this. It isn't a gift. What is it? A finished sentence. The terrace door opened again. Margaret waited without speaking. Ethan stepped away from the railing. Goodbye, Emma. She turned. Ethan. He paused. I'm sorry. He studied her face. For years, he had imagined hearing those words. In those fantasies. Apology brought relief. Vindication. Perhaps even healing. But healing had arrived much earlier, quietly, during mornings no one witnessed. It had arrived through work, failure, friendship, loneliness, discipline. The apology could not give him what he had already learned to give himself. Still, he nodded. I believe you. Then he walked inside. Emma remained on the terrace, holding the ring beneath the city lights. She did not chase him. For once, she understood that some doors should not be forced open simply because regret had arrived late. The next morning, Orion's review began. Emma's division did not survive unchanged. Half the leadership positions were eliminated. 2 programs were closed. Several executives resigned before they could be dismissed. Emma expected her own name to appear on the termination list. It did not. Instead, the independent review placed her in a lower position overseeing a smaller team. The salary reduction embarrassed her. The loss of title felt public. Old colleagues whispered. Some expected her to complain. Others assumed Ethan had spared her. She nearly resigned. Then she read the review report. It was detailed, specific, painfully fair. Her strengths were acknowledged. Her failures were not softened. For the first time in years, someone had evaluated her without fear, flattery, or personal loyalty. She sat alone in her office until sunset. Then she removed her nameplate from the door, not in anger, because the title printed on it no longer belonged to her. She began again. Months passed. Emma worked without demanding attention. She listened more, spoke less. The employees who once feared her began bringing her problems before they became disasters. She learned the names of junior analysts. She stopped taking credit for work she had only supervised. The change was not dramatic. No applause followed it. No magazine wrote about it. But gradually, the people around her stopped stiffening when she entered a room. One afternoon, while cleaning an old drawer, she found the wedding ring. She had placed it inside an envelope after the gala. For a long moment, she held it beneath the light. Then she drove to the restaurant where she had ended her marriage. The private dining room had been renovated. The chandelier was different. The marble floor remained. Emma stood near the table where Ethan had signed the papers. She could still see him bending down while everyone else watched. She had once mistaken silence for weakness. Now she understood how much strength it had taken for him not to become cruel. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. Emma closed her fingers around the ring. Then she slipped it into a small wooden box and placed the box inside her coat. She did not throw it away again. Some objects were not meant to be worn. They were meant to teach. Across the city, Ethan stood in Orion's headquarters as dawn rose behind the skyline. His executive team had worked through the night, completing an international expansion agreement. Margaret entered his office carrying 2 cups of coffee. You should go home, she said. So should you. I'm not the billionaire pretending exhaustion is a personality trait. He accepted the coffee. Fair. She glanced at the empty corner of his desk. The box is gone. Ethan followed her gaze. Yes. How do you feel? He looked through the glass toward the city. Morning light spread between buildings, turning thousands of windows gold. Lighter. Margaret smiled. His phone vibrated. A message from his lead engineer, the same man who had once asked whether they should stop in the tiny office above the bakery. The Singapore system had reached another milestone. Ethan replied with 2 words. Well done. He placed the phone down. Years earlier, success had seemed like a distant stage on which he would finally prove everyone wrong. Now he understood it differently. Success was not the applause, not the valuation, not the look on Emma's face when his name appeared behind him. It was the ability to stand before the person who had wounded him and feel no need to wound her back. It was returning the ring without returning to the man who had once begged to be chosen. It was waking each morning inside a life built from truth rather than approval. Margaret headed toward the door. Board meeting in 20 minutes. I'll be there. She paused. Are you happy, Ethan? He considered the question. Beyond the glass, the city was waking. Buses moved through the streets. Lights turned on inside office towers. Somewhere, someone sat before an old laptop, working on an idea no one else believed in yet. Ethan smiled. Not the controlled smile of a chief executive facing cameras. A real one. I'm at peace. Margaret nodded and left. Ethan remained by the window. He thought briefly of the ring spinning beneath the chandelier, of the sound it made when it struck the floor. So small, so final. At the time, he had believed it marked the end of his life. He had been wrong. It marked the end of a life built around someone else's definition of his worth. The ring had been thrown away. The man had not. He had gathered the broken pieces in silence. He had carried them through cold apartments, rejected meetings, unpaid bills, sleepless nights, and rooms where people laughed before he finished speaking. Then he built something from them. Not an empire. Himself. And that was why, when the city opened beneath him and the morning light touched the glass, he did not think of revenge. He did not think of regret. He did not think of the woman who had once said he would never become someone worth remembering. He simply turned toward the door and walked into the life waiting for him. He had not become successful to win her back. He became successful when he finally chose himself.